Hey guys, it's Omer from MMOs.com with another quick weekly news recap of all major MMO news and announcements for the week ending January 25th, 2016. This is episode number 27 of the recap, and the first bit of news this week has to do with Blade and Soul, which is also the biggest news last week. So as we all know, the game officially launched for everybody on January 19th, and given that there were already large login queues for premium users, no one should be surprised to hear that the free-to-play users are getting hit with huge queues to log on. The game was practically unplayable for a lot of people since launch, as most people aren't willing to wait in queue for hours on end just to get on. We did hear some news from NCSoft earlier this week, a few days after launch, that they're working on the issue by adding more servers and optimizing their code, but so far it's still been consistently difficult to get on. I guess it's a good problem to have considering the game is exploding in popularity right now, but it's also kind of funny because it seems no company can get their launches done right. You think they would launch with excess server capacity and then reduce it as needed, but they all instead choose to launch with a small capacity and get surprised when they get overwhelmed. But regardless, they should fix these problems rather quickly. It's still a good problem for them to have. I mean, a lot of people do want to check the game out, so that's definitely a positive sign. Next up, we have some news from John Smedley, the former CEO of Sony Online Entertainment / Daybreak Games. Smedley, as some of you are already aware, resigned from Daybreak to work on something new, and that something new is called Hero Song, which launched its Kickstarter campaign with an $800,000 goal. Hero Song isn't being billed as an MMO, and is instead calling itself an open-world roguelike fantasy game that can be played both offline and online via servers. Smedley's company is called Pixel Made Studios, and they aim to create a uniquely in-depth and hardcore gaming experience that features beautiful pixel art, thus the name Pixel Made Studios. And apparently they already raised $1 million from private investors and now looking to raise another $800,000 from Kickstarter because why not? The one good thing I like about their Kickstarter page is that they actually lay down a clear development timeline and are aiming to launch the game in full by October. And given the industry veterans working on the game, I suspect they'll actually be able to follow through with their launch schedule, something a lot of crowdfunding games fail to do. Looking at you, Star Citizen. And yeah, even though the game doesn't bill itself as an MMO, it does feature a lot of the classical online RPG experience, so in a way, it's still kind of an MMO. Unfortunately, it will not be free to play though, and will cost $19.99 at launch. Next up, a bit of news for a game called Rappelz, an older MMORPG from Webzen. The game is launching Epic 9 Part 3 on February 2nd, and that's Epic number 9. So each Epic is one of the game's major expansions, and this is Epic number 9 Part 3. It'll be adding a whole bunch of new stuff to the game, namely a new dungeon, new monsters, and the game's Final Awakening system. I can't imagine there are too many of you out there that still do play Rappelz. It launched back in 2006. It was one of the earlier free-to-play MMORPGs, and it was pretty solid for back in the day. But it still maintains its core player base, and that's why they're still updating it. But again, it launched back in 2006, so it's one of the older free-to-play MMORPGs that are still in service. And if you're curious, the video in the background is actually for the Epic 7 update, only because it shows actual gameplay. Some of the Epic 9 stuff doesn't show any actual gameplay, and we're all about those trailers with gameplay. Next up, a bit of obscure news from Mytheon. The game relaunched as a buy-to-play title just last month, and they did release a content update for the game, and it was a $4.99 DLC pack called their Egyptian content, which increased the game's base level cap to 40, adds a new hub based in Thebes, a new PvP dual location, and a few other small updates. I do want to say though, this game is from Petroglyph. They've released the game very specifically saying, we're not really going to update this game anymore because it was shut down before, but you know what, we don't want to waste it, so we'll still put it out there. So if you want to play it, it does cost money, but don't expect any future updates. So based on that alone, I don't think it's worth it, but hey, if you want to buy the game and check it out, it's like $9 for the base game plus the expansion. Moving right along to something not as obscure, we got some news from MapleStory 2. The game released the Runeblader class about last month, and they're also showing off some gameplay in the video for in-game social elements. You can actually craft your own music, not really craft, but you can compose your own music rather, as well as, or just play some pre-rendered stuff in the in-game minigame. So it's a nice little touch to MapleStory 2, and actually reminds me very much for Mabinogi, so they're clearly following that path a bit. And how cute is this video in the background? Unfortunately, there's still really no news for the game in the West. They're making slow updates to it in South Korea, but there's no word on a Western release just yet, so we'll have to keep waiting. And the video in the background is from Steparu, so credit to Steparu. They're one of the best websites for foreign game news and stuff just out of Korea and China, so if you're looking for stuff from Korea and China, check them out. Next up, a bit of news from Paladins. Apparently they're making a design shift to make more heroes in the game, more champions, and less customization. So the biggest thing players requested in Paladins was more characters. So in order to accommodate that, they're kind of going the route of making a more traditional MOBA. They're going to scale back the customization, so it's more predefined paths, but they're going to have more heroes to make up for it. So before they were going for a kind of really in-depth, customize your character the way you want feel, with a lot of RNG as well, but now they're going a more traditional MOBA route. We'll see how that pans out for them, but it is definitely a big change in the game. So if you're a Paladins fan, it's a big change, and we'll see how it pans out. do think it's kind of weird that they're going with that, because I feel like the card system and the randomness of it was really a unique mechanic in the game. But again, we'll see how it works out. Do keep in mind though, this is still being implemented. This was all mentioned in a Rock Paper Shotgun interview, so it's still all in the works. Up next, a bit of news from Heroes of the Storm. 2 new heroes have been announced for the game. Zul the Necromancer and Li Ming the Wizard, both of whom are from the Diablo universe. The Necromancer character is supposed to be akin to the Diablo 2 Necromancer, so you can expect a cool skeleton army, which actually sounds really cool. I mean, if anything, you want to give it to Blizzard for making some innovative heroes. They're doing things like 2-player hero on 1 character, and now the Necromancer with a touch of pets, so they're definitely pushing the envelope with design, so that's definitely a big plus for them. But both League and Dota are still quite entrenched, but we'll see how HOTS does in the near future. Also worth mentioning with the update is that Blizzard specifically said that these new characters have a little bit higher skill cap, and they're actually aiming to raise the general skill level of players in Heroes of the Storm. So people that complained that the Heroes of the Storm just felt too easy will now have to deal with, I guess, more complex heroes, and they're aiming to make the game a little bit harder. So that's definitely a plus for people like me, at least, that are looking a little more challenged in their games. Up next, after a pretty lengthy open beta phase, Spellweaver, the collectible card game, is launching on February 1st. It's a free-to-play game that's going to monetize probably the same way as Hearthstone and these other new card games coming out, but it's a game designed by Bulgarian national champion Magic the Gathering player Ivko Stanilov, so clearly inspired by Magic the Gathering, considering it's made by a player who's really good at Magic the Gathering, so you can expect some similarities. If you want to check the game out right now, you can, because again, it's still an open beta, but the full release again will be on February 1st. Next up, a bit of a follow-up to previous week's news. Forsaken World Awakens officially launched this week. It was actually supposed to launch on January 20th, but they had some delays and problems, and I do believe it launched on January 21st or 22nd due to some back-end problems. And again, it is the 16th expansion to Forsaken World, so they've updated this game quite a bit. It increased the game's level cap to 100, adds new gear to the game, as well as a new raid boss and new area. Despite the game's age too, people still do play it. It still maintains its core user base of hardcore dedicated players. Though it's an older game now, so I can't expect too many new players to jump in, but for those out there that do play Forsaken World, you have a new expansion to enjoy. Next up, we got some news from a game called The Black Death, which is set to launch on Steam Early Access in March. It's another survival game, but it does try to differentiate itself because along with surviving in a world, it's set in medieval Europe, you kind of have to fight against players as well as the Black Plague, thus the name of the game called The Black Death. So it's set in a pretty large, realistic 8-kilometer world, however big that will be in game we'll see, with a full day-night cycle, 10 classes, and a bunch of other goodies. But it is another survival game, but instead of just surviving out there against other players, you gotta avoid getting the plague, which sounds interesting. We'll see how they pull it off. Next and last bit of news is actually a little bit interesting. Carbon Games' official website was blocked by the Portuguese government this week, and Reddit got up in arms about why on earth was their website blocked, because they passed some laws in Portugal saying they can block anti-piracy websites, and apparently they ended up blocking a gaming website which had nothing to do with piracy, so everybody got kind of pissed off. But at the end of the day, they found out the reason it was blocked. Apparently the Portuguese government misidentified Carbon Games' website to be equal to Carbon Gaming's website. So they mistook the two names, Carbon Gaming versus Carbon Games, one of which was an online betting site which was illegal in Portugal, and that's why it was blocked. It had nothing to do with censorship or anything, but it was interesting to see an official website for a game get blocked by accident. And hopefully nothing like that happens again, because it would suck for games to be censored. Anyway guys, that's it for all major MMO news this week. And the video you're seeing in the background was AirMech, because that's a game that Carbon Games does publish. But I'll see you guys tomorrow for the podcast. Later guys.